Don Pratt, host of a show here on Rogers TV where we give you a perspective of police in your community. Welcome to Policing York Region. Today we're going to talk about the history of policing in York Region. Not a topic I've ever delved into before, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And I have with me Scott Dexter from the Planning and Research Department. Scott, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Good morning, Don. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to change up your intro a little bit.
Okay.
Scott Dexter, the York Regional Police historian.
Yeah, I do a few more things.
Yes.
I'm attached to the Planning and Research and Evaluation Department,
right,
which is a very handy place to be if you're looking at the history, because we hold the records.
Absolutely.
And that means that I can dig more into the history, which is becoming very, very much more important than it ever was before.
It is. You know, it's only been the last couple of years that I've actually started to learn a bit about the history. I've more been dealing with the current, which is always new, interesting, exciting, and ever so changing. But I have to say that I'm finding it of great interest to learn what the history of York Regional Police, or of policing in the region of York, is.
Well, you really have to admire the people that came before us. And this is a little different show than what you're used to, because it starts in 1813.
Right. Yeah, so it goes back a little ways.
Yeah, there was a village of York, which is now called the City of Toronto, and they had this kind of fear that the neighbors down south would come up and take them over, and that was kind of a problem for Canada as well. So the village rallied their troops, their militia, which would be the 3rd York Militia, and they gave them a banner and they gave them a motto, and the motto was to represent and thank them for the fact that they were defending the colony, and they were protecting it and keeping it safe.
Yes.
The motto was Deed Speak, which is exactly the same model that York Regional Police uses today.
All these years later.
We're still doing the same thing, keeping the community safe.
Well, the chief finishes off every single speech with Deed Speak.
Well, it's a good motto. We like it.
Yeah.
But that's where it comes from, 1813, and we've carried it right up through.
Well, we have some slides, some pictures that we're just going to start running through them, and it'll kind of keep us on topic for where we are talking about. So you were talking about in 1813 the 3rd York Militia and the extension of the military and the volunteer service, and I'll just get you to speak to this a little more, the path of policing.
Yeah, what had happened is it was a colony, and they had no police, they had no real government per se, and they decided what they would do is they would set up a militia. There was a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd York Militia, and these were young people. You were basically told you're now in the army, and it was a volunteer. Some of it was volunteer, some of it you had to do so many days a month. But as our good friends in the South decided that maybe Canada should be the 51st state, there was some fear that they were going to come and invade us, which they actually did come in April of 1813 and burn down York.
Yes.
So it was a valid concern, and they ended up burying the flag that they'd given on the 23rd of March, 1813.
Wow.
To keep it from the enemy. Now, later on, basically, this is the war that established Canada as being a separate entity from the United States. So it's a very important part of the thing. So this is some pretty honorable roots to be attached to.
Yes.
And we still keep that. In Fort York, there's the flag, the original flag, and the Deed Speak is on the wall in the officers' mess.
It is, yes.
So it's something you can go and see and realize, that we're part of something that really was part of Canada being established.
It is, absolutely.
So what a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah. And then, so in 1924, you're talking about the York Constabulary.
Every municipality had some form of policing, but this was, usually an ex-military guy, and he would start the fires in the municipal building, to get things going in the morning, and he'd sweep the boardwalk, and if there was a bar fight, he'd take care of that, or the horses running loose in the street, and it was a very loose type of thing. In 1924, York County, which included Toronto at the time, said we want to get a little more organized. So they set up the York Constabulary, and what its purpose is to bring law and order to the frontier, essentially. They went and conscripted part-time people, usually with a military background, but not necessarily. And so you could be a constable in Newmarket for your county constabulary.
Right.
And if they needed to arrest somebody, they would send you a note by mail.
A note by mail.
A note by mail, yes.
Wow.
Well, if you wanted to complain...
Technology has changed just a little bit.
If you wanted to complain, it was, okay, you've just been robbed
Yes.
in your house in Newmarket. So you're going to put a letter in the mail to the York Constabulary, and they'll get it, and they'll dispatch an officer by mail to come look at your robbery, and that could be a month to 3 months. And they were expected to recover whatever was stolen.
Right.
But smaller communities, most people knew who was doing the bad stuff anyway.
Yeah.
But they would get piecework for that. So they would get paid maybe $1 to come and arrest the bad guy, and then they would hire a buggy to take him to court in Toronto. Court used to be in Kingston, so they'd have to have a ferry ride too.
Wow.
Actually, a sad but an interesting point is that the first constable killed in the line of duty was from King Township, and he was transporting a prisoner to the jail and the courthouse in Kingston, and the ferry sank. So him and the judge and the accused drowned.
Yes.
So that was one of the problems of being a policeman, is I think you had to know how to swim.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But that's how that worked at that time, and it eventually got better, and later on they decided they'd issue them badges.
Right.
They didn't have badges originally. Yeah. They didn't have jackets or uniforms at one time.
No.
And there was no full-time
No, they
people.
certainly didn't have the resources or the organization that we do today.
Oh, no, nothing like that.
Nothing like
very
that.
little for training, very little for compensation.
Right.
But they managed to, over a period of time, they got it better and better, and it worked its way up.
Wow. And then skipping forward, we're talking about the birth of municipal policing.
Yeah, municipal policing is probably the most interesting topic, because we still have a lot of information on that. A lot of the people that were municipal police officers became York Regional Police officers later. And due to a change of the legislation in 1950,
so we're showing some of the actual police offices that were.
So this would be, for example, Aurora Police, and it was established.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that
East Gwillimbury?
one of the chiefs in Aurora became chief of York Regional Police.
Oh, nice.
East Gwillimbury was a big force at the time. They were the ones that had a radar set.
Wow.
You had to drive in East Gwillimbury to get stopped by radar. Newmarket didn't have one.
Right.
Georgina.
Georgina policing.
What a great police force. The chief of Georgina, there should be a book written about this man.
Right.
He had worked for 6 police forces. He set up a marching band.
Yes, I did.
He received an award from the Ontario government for his community policing. He set up majorettes. He was the first boat on the lake that was a police boat.
Yeah, on Lake Simcoe, yeah.
He's just a fantastic guy. He started with 3 guys for a township, which was unheard of.
Wow.
Because most of them would have had 8 or 10, but he managed to do the job.
So and then King Township?
Then King was another one established, the largest township at one time in York Region.
And then there's the Markham?
Markham Township Police was one of the larger ones. They went to a lot of fairs, and they eventually did a lot of work with Toronto.
Right.
Markham Village Police, very small police force at one time, and well loved. The man was quite the gentleman.
Right.
And he was quite the policeman too. He was known to be all over.
Right.
Newmarket Police. Newmarket was one of the longest established police forces. They'd had a form of policing since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
So they'd been in it for a while.
Yeah. And then North Gwillimbury.
North Gwillimbury.
So that brings us up into the Keswick area.
Yep. North Gwillimbury used to be part of Georgina.
Yeah.
It became part of Georgina. But it was Keswick and area, and it was a big police force.
Yeah.
It was run out of the chief's house at one time.
Yeah, I understood that. They operated off the main floor, but lived in the second floor.
Mrs. Hill ran the radio, and she'd bring down cookies and coffee for the guys. Stouffville, one of my favorite places. Stouffville was the Wild West at one time. If you went to Stouffville, there was no radio service at one time.
Right.
And a real gentleman that ran that. He straightened out the world. It was a great little police force. Sutton Town didn't last that long. It ended up getting rolled into Georgina, which is interesting because Len Donner was the chief of Sutton, and then he eventually became the chief of Georgina, and he ended up doing the same work he was doing before.
Of course. And then Vaughan.
Vaughan,
that's quite a size.
Yeah, Vaughan was the biggest, and the chief of Vaughan was predicted to be the new chief of York Regional Police at one time.
Oh, well.
And the council had a different idea on it.
Okay. Well, that happens. That happens.
Whitchurch Township, another big police force. There was a racetrack basically from Toronto to the north, and Whitchurch Township policed it. But they had a 30-year cold case solved from Whitchurch to Stouffville. Woodbridge, little town police, didn't last very long, rolled into Vaughan. And,
right, yeah. So there was some amalgamations amongst the smaller...
Yeah. There was 14 municipalities at one time, plus the York Constabulary, plus the OPP.
Right.
But they all rolled into York Regional Police, basically for financial reasons.
Okay.
I think it was 1950.
I'm going to have to cut you off right there.
Yep.
We're going to come right back. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages, and we'll chat some more about the history. Welcome back, everyone, as we talk about the history of policing in York Region with Scott Dexter from Planning and Research. Scott, it was very interesting in the first segment to see, and people wouldn't know, unless their own history prevails, how many smaller regional police districts there were.
Yeah, there was 14 at one time, and they had to somehow roll these into York Regional Police.
Yes.
The cars were leased. They were all two-door cars.
I noticed that you just showed me this morning in a picture. I'd never picked up on that before. Yeah. How interesting that a police cruiser would be two doors.
Yeah, they were leased. They were leased cars, and it was cheaper. Wow. And the two-door cars were cheaper. Some of them, they didn't put the lights on them. They would actually hold up a light on a pole.
Yes.
That said, "Please stop." And so they'd wave this thing madly in front of you, and hopefully your car, you'd see it because it would be on the driver's side, and you'd stop your car.
Yes.
And the problem is they would get out and talk to you or give you your ticket or whatever like this, and they put the light down on the seat.
Of course.
And it was so hot it set the seat on fire. So that's why they put them on the fender from then on.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that more in the 70s, 80s. It was on the passenger fender.
So you used to go on the passenger
cruiser.
fender. That's wise, because they would pull up beside your car, turn the light on.
Wow.
And this was the light that they would put on. You could tell a police car because it had a hole in the front.
Yeah.
They had light bars too, but there were all different light bars, so they had to figure out what we were doing there. The radio system was in one police officer's case. He had a wire hanger over the back of his desk, coming from the radio and going out the window, and that was his modern police communication system.
Well, and it brings us back to a part in the first segment where you were saying, if you had, say, you were the victim of something, you would actually write a letter, and then that letter would create an investigation. And in today's time, that's how I'm writing my letter.
Yeah, isn't it interesting?
Right. I mean, technology has come such a vast way. It's incredible.
Well, this is why the municipalities wanted their own police, is they could go and talk to the guy.
Right.
But they still didn't have telephones. They still didn't have radios, a lot of them. So they would have a light they would mount at the end of the street. It was a red light. And what you do is...
This was in Newmarket, right?
Yeah, the operator would turn the light on, and the policeman said, "Oh, I must have a call," and you go phone the operator. And this was common in Newmarket and Aurora.
So that's actually how you were dispatched? That's
how you were dispatched. Is the operator, the Bell Canada operator, would take the call and put on the light, and you'd go and phone the operator to find out what happened. That was your dispatch.
You've now been dispatched to a
You've
call.
now been dispatched. Now, if you had a car, you could get there fast. But if you didn't have a car, you walked it.
If you had a car.
Or you borrowed transportation to get there if you needed to.
Wow.
So it was quite the thing of the day. One of the police chiefs was quoted as, "If you don't have a guy in the back, if you don't have somebody arrested in the back, you better not have the car."
Because that's was its purpose, right?
Well, yeah, it was needed to take the prisoners to court.
So when did this amalgamation happen? Then? You said there was around 14.
There was 14 separate municipalities. Some were quite large, like Vaughan.
Yeah, I know. I noticed in some of the earlier slides. Some were quite large.
They made the decision on January 30th, December 30th, 1970. And on January 1st, 1971, York Regional Police came into existence.
Oh, wow.
It was no building, no office, no car, no uniforms. Wow. So when Chief Crawford, who came from the Harbour Commission in Toronto, was appointed as chief, he came up to see his new jurisdiction, and there was nothing to see.
Wow.
So he had to literally start from nothing. He had no cars, he had no
This
no
really
radios.
was starting at the beginning then.
Starting all over again, yeah. He had good support from the council at the time, and they had budgeted for some of this stuff. But they had a devil of a time, figuring out from 14 police stations to 4.
Of course.
So they have to downsize that, and they have to roll these staff in, and some had no training. Some were quite well trained. And now you've got to put them into a police service. And he did something that was rather unpopular. He made everybody a constable, essentially.
Oh, wow.
So you're the chief of Sutton, or you're now a constable. You're going to get paid as the chief, but you're still a constable.
Okay. As far as your ranking structure goes.
Yeah, and then everybody writes exams, and then we'll decide what you're going to be.
Right.
So in one case, I think it was in Markham, the deputy chief became the inspector, and the chief became the sergeant.
Wow.
Didn't go over well.
No, I can't imagine it would. But understanding if you're bringing bosses from 14 different units.
Yeah, and they were concerned because, if they promoted somebody from within, is there going to be a problem?
Sure.
So they brought in somebody from outside, and he didn't come in to be everybody's friend. He came in to organize a police service. He was a former Navy officer. He knew how about discipline. He knew how to do organization, and that's what they paid him to do.
Right.
So he originally worked out of a room in the county building, which was on Bayview Drive at the time.
Oh.
And then he got 240 Prospect, which was still a police station today. It was a temporary measure.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah. It's been about 45 years as a temporary measure.
So 240 was the original headquarters?
Was the original headquarters after the room in Bayview Drive, yeah.
Oh, interesting. So that's been a long time headquarter building.
And we've renovated and such, and we've tried to, save dollars, and rather than the new building, we renovated, but the reality is it's probably just as cheap to build a new one now.
Yeah.
But when they first looked at building, they were going to build a police station that was 2 floors. Right. It was going to have a bomb shelter in it, because remember, it's the 60s, after the 60s, nuclear, right? Yeah. It was going to have a helicopter pad. We didn't have a helicopter, but we were going to have a helicopter pad.
But you were going to have a pad, okay.
And that would have been an interesting if they build that.
Yeah.
The other place they were looking at is they're going to take over the county building, the old age home.
Wow.
And that's where the courthouse is now.
Oh, interesting.
And that didn't work out. It failed by 1 vote. So they ended up in a temporary 240 Prospect, which turned out to be a good thing because they had all the furniture already. It was a furniture manufacturing building originally.
Oh, it was too. I'd heard that.
Yeah. So they got their furniture for nothing. But eventually, they started to work their way through. But they had leases for the cars, so they had to get rid of because they had their own cars, and they borrowed the cars from Toronto, which was the yellow chrome ones.
Right. Yes.
And that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And eventually they got things going. The radio system was a whole different thing, though. All of a sudden they have to go countywide.
Yeah, of course.
And
the red light's not going to work as well.
No. These are real big red lights.
These are big red.
So they ended up using British technology, unheard of technology at the time, where the car would talk to the other car, would talk to the other car, and carry the signal on.
Oh, interesting.
So it was like repeaters.
Each car repeated the signal.
And that's how they got around without building a whole bunch of towers.
Wow.
And it worked very well. We were one of the first police forces in North America to use that.
It's still every time you suggest something like that, I keep thinking of the leaps and bounds that technology has made, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. No longer it's a letter to report your crime.
No, no. In fact, it's actually digital.
It's digital. Yeah.
Right.
Because at one time the 911 calls were answered by Bell Canada.
Really?
And
I didn't know that.
York Region only got them when they came in directly, or when they you phoned a line and were transferred internally.
Interesting.
Because the original 911 came out of Ottawa.
I did not know that.
That's one of the reasons I was hired at one time, was we were taking over the 911 locally.
Yeah.
So if you dialed 911, it would come to York Region if you were in York Region.
Right. Yeah.
The rest of the time I went to Ottawa.
So it would be
That was
decided.
transferred,
It
yeah.
would be decided by a Bell operator.
Yeah, so that was another big leap in technology.
Wow.
And York Region Police, my goodness, they've been leading in stuff, probably because we had to, because
fair
of the land we have, because we have urban and rural and lake. And
You definitely do have mixed use. I mean, no matter where you go in the region, you can drive for 2 minutes and the landscape changes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And the training we give to our officers, our K9 is trained differently than the Toronto one, for example. We have a helicopter, and it's not because it's nice, it's because we need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it could be something happening and quite a distance away in a remote area.
Yeah, we had the opportunity of talking with the air support unit not so long ago, and you, especially speaking up close with the officers, you see the value in getting from point A to point B so much faster.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Like I talked to one officer who was telling me about when he worked in the 60s, and he said he had went to a bank robbery and he had 3 flat tires because the car was so bad, and he ended up getting a lift from a neighbor.
Wow, is that right?
So that was kind of an interesting little game.
And then, I'm going to keep going back to the technology thing. Here we're talking about air too, just in general surveillance.
Yeah.
Just in, like you were saying before, that some areas may have only had 1 or 2 cars. Well, now you have eyes way up above that can give you a far more global sighting on it.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference in something like a pursuit.
Of course it does.
Because now, if they don't think they're being followed, they slow down, and that's safer for the community.
Yes.
We're still following the idea that was set up in 1813, keep your community safe.
Yes.
And that sometimes means we've got to be a little more creative.
Yes.
But means we can do things.
Yes.
So we're still continuing that tradition.
And that's worthy to note, when you said if people don't think that they're being followed, they slow down.
Yeah.
Long gone are the high-speed pursuits.
Yeah.
That's the realization that that's actually an endangerment to the community, right?
Well, the whole concept of policing has changed. At one time, it was reactive policing.
Yes.
Everybody knew who stole the stuff,
Yeah.
who robbed the stuff, so that they would go out and arrest them.
Yes.
Today's policing is proactive policing.
Absolutely.
And we have to do that.
Yeah.
1, it's cheaper, and 2, it's better.
It is.
Because we go into schools, we go into all of the places, and we remind people about what can happen. And this prevents people from doing dumb things,
Yeah.
which means prevents court time, prevents them from getting criminal record.
It does.
It's cheaper in the long run. Yes. People want to do good stuff, but sometimes they just need a little guidance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
proactive policing is definitely the way to go, and everybody's on board with it. It may not be that open, but that's what we do today, and it's just a much better way of doing things.
Yeah, and speaking to Superintendent Ricky Varapan of your Diversity Bureau, and that's what his focus and Mark Topping, detective of hate crime, that's what their focus is build those relationships before they go sour.
Oh, absolutely.
Right now you have an open door to walk into on the day that perhaps you need it, right? From a policing perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
In the old days, you had to fight or fly. Talk your way out of it because you were only one policeman.
Yeah.
Or talk to the community, and talking to the community works.
No, it does. It does. And we see it, as part of a community policing volunteer team. We do see it as they're always saying now that we want people to meet the police before that time of need.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want them to meet on a good day.
Well, the whole concept of our upcoming Police Week, the whole concept of the First Responder Day in Georgina there.
Absolutely.
Come out and talk to us, let us help you keep your community safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, First Responders Day up in Georgina, fantastic event, and that's exactly what it's for, is you bring all of your community. They're welcome to come out and meet everybody. Open house at York Regional Police is the same thing. Come on out and meet all your first responders.
The first time you meet a police officer shouldn't be when you need a police officer.
No, and that's exactly it. What a great topic, the history of policing in York Region. Scott, it's been a tremendous pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
And I would very much like to do a couple of follow-up pieces to this, so I'll be knocking on your door for that.
Well, that'd be great, and if we can get the community to contribute some things to add to our history, that'd be great too.
Absolutely. We had your contact information on the screen.
Very good.
Folks, that wraps up this episode of Policing York Region. Been great having you. Look forward to seeing you again.